Hi again, everybody. So, Anthony here, and let's have a conversation about money and grad school. And this is not, I don't know, I guess maybe I should have some kind of disclaimer that I'm not giving you financial advice or your experience may vary or something like that that you've maybe heard um, from bank establishments and financial establishments and infomercials on TV. But what I really want to talk about today is how do you, as a grad student, take care of earning money while in school and what options are available to you? Uh, Typically, as an undergrad, you might work part time, you might work on campus, you have a work study, have a loan or a grant, something like that. Grad school is a bit different in the sciences. Now, if you are in something like an English or humanities or history program, it's even going to be different than what I'm discussing today. So, today is more in line with my experience in science and from conversations I've had from other people with science backgrounds. And so this is sort of not a catch all for every degree or major, but it is fairly common in the hard sciences. And so, as I've kind of made alluded to in other previous videos, a lot of times when you, as a grad student, come on campus, you're going to have opportunities to do research and or teaching. And usually, when you are applying to schools and you're offered a letter of admission, these details will be explained to you. And if not, then that's part of going on a campus visit or talking to the staff at that university to find out like what opportunities are available for me to pay for my education. Sometimes you may be offered it. In fact, it happened to me at one point where I was accepted into a couple of graduate programs where they said no financial there is no financing available for you or no assistantships available for you. Well, in that case, you have to make a hard decision if you want to go and pay out of pocket or if you're going to decline the offer. And in my circumstances, I declined those offers because I wasn't going to go to grad school and not get paid to do research or do some kind of work for the department. And so most students I've known, especially in like chemistry, where I got my PhD, is you are offered admission to a department and they tell you up front that there's funding available for you. And if there wouldn't be funding, then they wouldn't even accept you is sort of the typical practice that schools aren't going to accept you unless they have money to keep you around and pay you to help them out. And so typically like in the first semester you might, and maybe sometimes even more than the first semester, you will be offered the opportunity to teach some freshman level, sophomore level classes in the department. And by doing that, you're going to get paid a stipend. And I will tell you up front, you're not going to get rich off of that, but it will be enough for you to, should be enough for you to pay for rent and food and the basics that you need as a grad student. And you will also typically be offered some kind of medical plan with an assistantship. And so some of your expenses are really diminished. And oftentimes, you don't even have to pay for classes if you're a grad student and on an assistantship. You're probably still going to have to pay a few $100s worth of fees. That happens to all of us. But a lot of your expenses are covered by the department as long as they put you on an assistantship. The first semester, it's usually a teaching assistantship. And then after the first semester, it's sort of contingent on whether you are working for a research group that wants to put you on a research assistantship, or if the research group you're in can't afford to put you on one immediately, in which case you might continue to do teaching for another semester or two or three. In my case, I was on a teaching assistantship for 5 semesters. That's a little bit unusual, but it does happen sometimes where you end up for an extended amount of time on a teaching assistantship. I was still doing research, but I was paid by for the teaching I was doing for the department. Now, some programs will put you on a research assistantship as soon as you get to campus. Or maybe after a semester or two, they will put you on a research assistantship. And the way that works is you are being paid to do research in your research group, whichever group you picked. And so between teaching and research assistantships, that's typically the way most graduate students are paid. And as a result, the hope by the department is you don't need to find a job off campus. Now, that said, when I was working on my master's, I did have an internship off campus, which was unpaid. I got academic credit for that. And then I also had a weekend job where I worked about 6 hours every Saturday. And occasionally I would have to go in for a couple hours on a weekday. And so I was working maybe 10 hours a week off campus. That was when I was working on my meteorology degree or my master's degree in meteorology. And that was sort of a unique opportunity. And my department was fine with me doing that. So it wasn't like I was doing it behind their back. But when I was working on my PhD in chemistry, like I wasn't going to do that again. That would have been much more challenging for me to do because of the hours I kept and the amount of work I was doing between teaching and doing research. I did know at least one student in the PhD program in chemistry who she worked at a coffee shop as an undergrad. And when she started grad school, she continued to work at the coffee shop for a couple semesters. And again, she would just go in and work on Saturdays or Sundays. And she wanted to make a little bit of extra money. And, it was her first year. Her research load wasn't that heavy and she was able to handle it. But I believe by the end of the first school year, she basically had left that job because it just was getting too challenging to work off campus and take care of her obligations on campus. So jobs off campus are unusual, especially if you have some kind of an assistantship. Now, occasionally students will manage to apply for a fellowship and get one of those. And basically, again, you are given some money to do research. And some fellowships are maybe offered by your university or college or department. And usually those kind of fellowships, they're not going to replace an assistantship. They're just going to give you maybe a few $1,000s so you can travel, or maybe they'll give you like a slight raise in pay. But your day-to-day experience at school isn't going to change anything or change in any way. I've also known people who've gotten national fellowships from, for example, the National Science Foundation. And typically with those, you apply and then it's the same as basically being on a research assistantship where for approximately 3 years, you are paid by this fellowship to do research. And there will be some obligations with that. There will be, I don't know what the pay is on those these days. But there are a few people who are in the top percentile of grad students who may be able to get a fellowship in order to pay for grad school. But again, like they're not going to pay for 5 or 6 or 7 years of grad school. It's usually 3 years is what the maximum number of time that they will pay for you to do research. And they may also give you some money to pay for expenses such as traveling to a conference and maybe for some lab experiments or materials you need to buy. So the fifth option, which is more popular for undergrads and grad students, is taking out loans. When I discuss this with different faculty, a lot of people discourage grad students from taking loans and they question, why would you ever take out a loan? And I'm kind of in the same boat that, it makes sense as an undergrad oftentimes to take out loans to help pay for school. But you should think carefully before taking out loans because if you're already being paid to be there, the question you should be asking yourself is why? What is the purpose of this loan? Why do I need that money? Is there something with my assistantship that's just I'm not able to make ends meet, or is there another reason why you need a loan? I can't say that I know any grad students who did take out loans to pay for grad school, at least in the sciences. I've heard it's maybe a little bit more common in departments or degrees where you are not being paid to be there, where there aren't assistantships available. But I think in those circumstances, the students often try to find work off campus or some kind of part-time job to help finance them. So loans, again, like they are available. Most people would discourage those, because, especially if you've got the other options available to you. Um, I hope that this gives you some clarity as far as like how grad students are paid or what kind of financial opportunities are available to you during grad school. And sometimes there might be something more than what I suggested, or you might think of some alternatives. And I don't know what more I want to say at this point. So I want to thank you again for tuning in for today's video, and I hope that what I had to say today has been informative. But I also want to say that as you're applying to grad schools, or once you get accepted, you have your campus visit, it's important that you're also asking questions about assistantships, fellowships, and other opportunities to make money as a grad student. Because it's important that you have clarity on these topics, and there might be some variability between departments, between programs, and it's important that you know up front what you're getting into before you accept, or even when you get on campus, to make sure that you can that money is one of those things that you don't have to be overly worried about in order to stay in grad school. So again, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again real soon. Bye.